Intermech and Futura Mobility. Before we get started, I want to take a few minutes just to let you know that we will be taking questions at the end of the webinar. So please submit your questions during the presentation using the question feature tool. We will also have a quick survey at the end of the webinar, and if you could just take a few minutes to give us your feedback, we would greatly appreciate it. My name is Gregory Hines. I'm with Futura Mobility. We are a preferred mobility solutions provider for Logistar, and we are also an Intermech Platinum partner. Just one last quick announcement is that Eric Nolan from Futura Mobility will be presenting in place of David Julian due to intermittent telephone connection issues. We hope to have David available to answer some questions via chat as well as during the Q&A. With that, let's get started. I want to introduce you to Kyle Swin, Director of SAP Solutions for Logistar.
Thanks, Greg. We'll go through an agenda here. Here we go. Sorry for a little bit. Okay, so basically I'll be driving the section on how the SAP data collection, the native data collection solution has evolved, and then we'll pass over to Bruce for the ever-evolving DC environment through Intermech, and then with Eric on the simplifying the implementation and support of mobile technology via Futura. And we'll try and leave enough time for some questions and answers at the end of the session as well. So the two native SAP data collection solutions that I'll be addressing today will be SAP Console and ITS Mobile. The first one we'll start with will be SAP Console. So really the history with SAP and their data collection, it's progressed as hardware has advanced, and also the operational and the software advancement has progressed as well. So when we were working with SAP quite a few years ago, a lot of it was character-based, store and forward, IDOC, interfaces. Then it would move to a near real time with those interfaces, and then SAP around 2000 released SAP Console, which is a character-based near real time, or sorry, that is a real time, but it's character-based solution. Their next advancement was with ITS Mobile, and that's more of a web or browser-based real-time solution. And then as of just the last few years, SAP has been working with Sybase and another company, Cyclo, on another data collection technique. Typically, we see this kind of solution like in field sales or service industry, where they might be having disconnected operations and then coming back within range and then reconnecting to the environment. But again, for today's purposes, the two native ones are the SAP Console and ITS Mobile solutions. So what is SAP Console? I'm having some screen delay here, but it is a native data collection technique within SAP. It is essentially a translator between the SAP ERP system, and it's translating those screens, the GUI screens, into something that can be formatted for the mobile devices. In this case, you see an example of SAP running in a warehouse management environment, SAP Console on the device. This one happens to be a pick-by-delivery transaction. You can also deploy SAP Console in an EWM environment, and that's what you're seeing on the right. So you can see here it's text or character-based. You can mess with the font color a little bit. Here you see the red and the white. I've also seen installs where it's like white and green. You can also, so for example, on the screen you have some function keys, F1, F2, F3. as well as enter. Also, those would be the inputs that you would enter on the device. Over on the right-hand screen with EWM, there's some function keys at the top as well as function keys at the bottom. Again, these are standard delivered solutions from SAP. So what does the SAP console architecture look like? Really, your SAP system would be on the left-hand side. In between your actual RF units and your SAP ERP system would be an actual SAP console server. Now that server itself is, for example, like a laptop can probably power 300 to 400 concurrent SAP users. So doesn't have to be a really high-powered server. On that server as well, you're running a telnet software, the telnet to do the character-based emulation, and then obviously that's connecting through your Ethernet or your wide area network to access points. Could be picture these access points as almost similar to ones you might even have in your house with your wireless router. These are just industrial strength, and then these are communicating to your handheld devices in the warehouse. Again, this whole loop is real time. So when I'm scanning a bin or keying or verifying a quantity or a material, it's interacting real time with the SAP backend system, whether it's again WM or EWM, and back to the device. So again, all in real time. So it is a mature product. Like I said, it was released in late '99, early 2000. There are a lot of configuration, configurable menu paths of how you want the actual actions within the SAP console transactions to look. The menus of like receiving or put away, those are all configurable. I can configure different bell signals, supporting delimiters. Again, I mentioned the standard. There's a set of standard function keys. You can remap function keys if needed as well. And again, it'll support multiple barcode formats. So also with SAP Console, anything you're running that you saw on the first set of RF devices, you can also run that just on the GUI itself. So you don't have to physically have an RF device. If we have some clients that have laptops. They might have like a packing station with a laptop out there instead. You could potentially pull up the SAP console transaction via the GUI, and that's what you're seeing on the left. On the right, what I want to point out with this one is, again, native SAP intended SAP console to work just within the warehouse, WM, or EWM environment. Through various partners such as Logistar, you can actually extend your SAP console transactions to work beyond that. The one on the right here is an example of an inventory management goods receipt for purchase order transaction. So we've enabled multiple modules within SAP to work in an RF environment. So such as quality management, production planning, again, IM are a lot of examples where that's in operation without needing warehouse management. We'll then move into ITS Mobile and have a look at the way ITS Mobile is structured. So what is it? It really does the same functions as SAP Console. It's just the display of ITS Mobile will look different. It'll look more like a web or a GUI-based version on your device. So ultimately, all it's doing is it's taking your ABAP, your SAP ABAP code that you have residing on your ERP system, and it's translating that, converting it into an HTML screen that can be formatted for the handheld device or for truck-mounted unit as well. In the middle, you see some of the system requirements, and the two standard screen sizes would be the 16 by 20, which is your handheld screen size, as well as your 8 by 40, which tends to be your vehicle-mounted unit. The architecture diagram is representing integrated ITS, meaning so the architecture is close to the SAP console architecture. However, you'll see here there's not a separate server. ITS is running on your NetWeaver stack within your ERP environment. So the architecture is actually simplified. So in your SAP system, that's your ERP system as well, running NetWeaver. ITS is running within that environment. Again, communicating over your network to your access points down to your RF devices. So a little more streamlined architecture. No need for example, that Telnet software as well. So there are some advantages there with ITS. So some examples of what ITS looks like. Again, you can see here supporting both WM and EWM in its native form. You'll still see function keys, but the screen is definitely more of a GUI browser-based look. You can enable all the touchscreen functionality on this, so I can touch the into the select box at the bottom, key in data there, or I can still scan. I can actually touch the function keys to perform that specific function, or I can leverage the function key on my internet device as well to advance through. And just like with SAP Console, again, I can run ITS Mobile via the GUI. Here you can see I'm just running Internet Explorer. It might be hard to see, but there's just a web address that I'm going to that'll pull up my my menus for ITS. So they're very very similar to what you would have seen with SAP Console, just again the browser-based look. And the same argument with being able to extend ITS beyond just WM or EWM. I can use it in IM, PP, different modules of SAP as well. So if you're looking for this kind of look and feel with the device and in the interaction with your end user, this is the kind of the flavor what ITS provides. Okay, the next presenter will be Bruce Stubbs, our Director of Industry Marketing from Intermec, and he'll be covering the ever-evolving DC environment. So I'll turn it over to Bruce.
Thank you very much. I wanted to welcome everybody who's joined us today. We thank you for taking the time out to join us on the webinar. As Kyle mentioned, I'll be talking about the ever-changing DC environment, or the ever-evolving DC environment. And we're actually living in some changing times from a standpoint of, just general technology. And because of that, if you think about it, we're really living in the post-PC era. So it's the consumerization, really, of IT. And Apple has even gone as far as changing their name from Apple Computer to Apple Inc. Another thing that's happening is, since we're moving post-PC, a lot of people are actually using personal devices to access business applications. So we've gone from a desktop to a laptop to now when we're traveling or anywhere really we're at, we see people using personal devices to access their business applications. And as you can see here, in 2010, greater than 30% of the people were accessing their business applications through a personal device, and that's grown to approximately 50% last year, and this year it's expected to grow even further. Another thing that's happening is we're looking at a reverse polarity from a standpoint of where technology is actually being developed. So it used to be that the large universities or the large organizations, and even sometimes the departments of defense or the military, would develop a lot of the technology, and then that would be pushed down to be used at the consumer level. That's really changing. A lot of the technology focus now is really on the consumer. So a lot of the technology that's being developed for the consumers is now being able to be utilized back upstream by those aforementioned organizations. And what this has done, it's actually, NVIDIA Corporation actually changed their business model to reflect this. So instead of developing and selling 200 million PCs for around $4 billion worth of revenue, they decided to sell 2 billion smartphones for $40 billion of revenue. Another thing that's happening is it's the arrival of the digital natives. It used to be years ago when I started in this business, change management in the distribution center was very difficult. It was difficult to get organizations and the staffs or the actual labor force to want to move from paper to some type of automatic data collection. That's now changing. The younger generation is a lot more tech savvy. They've grown up around technology, and in fact, they're looking at it as sort of a BYOD, bring your own device. And they're very attuned to wanting to accept technology, but they want to accept it on their own devices. Why do I have to use a purpose-built device? Why can't I use my commercial device to access those applications? And another thing that's changing really is the pace of technology. The half-life of technology has gone from, certainly from decades to years, it's now into months. So if you think about when you go in to buy some electronics or some high-tech gear, it's actually almost, it's out of date by the time that you leave the store. So the pace of technology, or the half-life of technology, is down to within months. And that's driving a lot of the technology toward the consumer level. And what it's really doing is it's creating a lot of data. And you've heard the term big data. Big data is the ability to be able to capture that data and actually use it. So in essence, if people are able to adopt systems that can present data in real time and present it in an actionable format, then data is really becoming the new currency. There's some other global forces that are also affecting what we're doing at Intermec and our strategies. And these are more focused on the distribution center environment. One is the pervasive broadband that exists. So if you think about it, everybody's connected all the time, whether it be through a personal device, an iPhone, an iPad, a laptop, whatever it may be. People are always connected. And what that's doing is it's creating this get-it-now culture. So if you think about from a get-it-now, the typical, in a distribution model, the distribution center would replenish a store. People would go to the store. They would purchase something. The store would recognize what they needed in stock. They would send an order back to the DC. And that was a traditional model. Well, what it's doing is it's creating a different type of distribution model. People can now order online. They can have it delivered to their home. They can have it delivered to their office. They can order it online in the morning and decide to pick it up at the store on the way home. But it's really a get-it-now culture, and it's not just for products and services. It's also for that aforementioned data. What that's doing is it's changing the demand velocity in the DC. So distribution centers now have to be multi-channel in their aspects. So there's still, for instance, some of the retailers still deliver to stores in a traditional manner for the shoppers, but they also have to have a direct-to-consumer model to be able to sell online. And that means segregating the inventories. It means having systems that can process the information they need in a much faster time frame to get the dock-to-stock cycle times down. So it's really putting a lot of pressure on distribution centers from a demand velocity standpoint. And the other thing it's doing is it's putting IT really at the front line. IT used to be something that was really in the background a lot of times, but now IT is at the front line. If you think about things that are delivered to your door, or whether it's a package, or whether it's a letter from FedEx or UPS, all that IT is happening at the front line. There's mobile computers that are capturing signatures. and keeping all that information and sending that information back to systems of record in real time. So IT is certainly now at the front line. And the one thing that with Intermec is we are positioned in the center of all those global forces and are able to act or interact with each. Another thing that's happening in distribution is there's some trends or some pain points that are really causing distribution managers a lot of insomnia. What's really keeping them awake at night? What are the things that, when we think of distribution and how to attack their problems and solve them, what do we need to be thinking about? First and foremost, and this is a common problem from years ago and it will be in the future, is safety and workforce morale. This is always an issue within the distribution center. It certainly causes time off. It also causes workforce turnover. All those things can be very expensive. So when we develop solutions, we need to be developing solutions that allow the worker to be safe in their environment and that they're ergonomic and that they enhance the morale. Another problem that's existing within distribution centers today is a lack of qualified people that are wanting to enter the distribution market. I recently spoke with a distribution center executive that I used to work for years ago, and they said it's hard to attract young people into distribution. People that are coming out with logistics degrees want to go into more high-paying type consulting roles right now and not into distribution. So that is creating a talent gap within distribution that we need to address with solutions. Another thing that's happening is the aforementioned, the distribution centers are getting pulled in too many different directions. What that's causing is sometimes the distribution center does not have the infrastructure to be able to support multi-channel distribution. So what they're doing is they're looking to 3PLs or other logistics providers to take on part of their business. A lot of times it's that direct-to-consumer business. So when speaking with distribution executives or when we're targeting certain market segments in the distribution arena, we need to be thinking of 3PLs because the 3PL market is growing at a rate of about 16%. Another thing that's affecting distribution centers is certainly the outsourcing that took place. With that outsourcing, there's been some issues. Certainly there's been some issues with supply chain disruptions due to some of the natural disasters. The wage rates in some of those emerging markets have now started to rise, which has made the actual economic viability of outsourcing a little less viable. So what's happening now, what we're seeing is a boomerang effect. So a lot of people are now starting to reshore their operations, whether that be from a manufacturing standpoint or a distribution and logistics standpoint. So when they're one of the problems, though, when they're bringing that operation back home is they've outsourced it and they no longer have the infrastructure from a facility standpoint, from a managerial standpoint, from a IT support standpoint, or from a labor force standpoint. So again, they're looking to 3PLs to help them enhance that process. Another ongoing issue from a standpoint of distribution executives' pain points is traceability. If you think of traceability, it's an ongoing issue. There's been a lot of incidences lately with both produce and certainly some of the other, the meat issue in EMEA. And what that takes is an end-to-end system in place to capture from point of harvest to point of sale or even later point of consumption. And distribution centers are looking to us to provide an end-to-end process where they can capture the information at that point of harvest, keep track of that information throughout the chain of custody, and be able to retrieve that information electronically in a matter of minutes or hours versus days. So why is there such a focus, or why do we focus so much on the distribution center? If you look at this typical model, this is a typical retail store model, and 30% of all cost of a retailer are involved in the warehouse or distribution center. 60% of that cost is labor. So that represents 18% of all cost, all operating costs for a traditional retailer are tied up in DC labor. And that can be significantly higher for some of the other target market segments like 3PL or wholesale distributors. So the reason there's such a focus is because if 18% of my total cost is tied up in the DC, whatever efficiencies through productivity, accuracy, and cost decrease I can put through the DC will certainly affect my bottom line overall. So how do we, as Intermec, make our clients successful? What do we do that makes them successful? First, with our Vocalect acquisition, we provide voice solutions that help both with safety, ergonomics, and workforce morale within the DC. It also drives productivity gains of 25 to 35% and accuracies greater than 99.9%. Along with voice, we also have our mobile computing division. That's both vehicle mount and handheld mobile computers, along with our fixed and mobile printers. What we're enabling people to do with these devices is really take the process to the product. They can be mobile and agile within the DC, not wasting a lot of travel back and forth to fix stations, and it allows them to perform their work at the point of process. And it's a lot more accurate because we're using data capture versus paper processes. We recently did a survey of 500 North American and Western Europe organizations, and 24% of those organizations were still using paper processes. Another tool that we use is RFID. RFID can be especially helpful when we're thinking about asset tracking, with whether it's returnable assets within a distribution center, such as totes or pallets or anything along those lines. It can also be highly effective when we think about using it for high-tech electronics. There's a big challenge today in the electronics industry, and a lot of that is due to counterfeiting. So and it's also a problem within the apparel industry. So by using RFID in these instances to uniquely identify the merchandise, one can very quickly move the products through their supply network, as well as very quickly make sure that it is actually their product. So if there's an issue around warranties or an issue around returns, it helps save companies money by making sure that it's actually their product that's having the problem. And along with our hardware, Intermec is also a software provider. We have different sets of software that coincide with our hardware, and that can be anything from address verification software to document imaging, and also the ability to capture direct product marking or use OCR to capture images that allow us to quickly move product through the supply chain. And we do that successfully with our partners. One of the things that we look at from an Intermex standpoint is we certainly are a technology organization, and we're certainly very innovative in that technology, but we have a process where we go out and speak to our customers and walk through their operations and understand their business better. The reason being is that we believe it's not just technology, but process combined with technology that drives success. Because an old process plus new technology really just is an expensive old process. So we look at both when we target our customers and go out to help drive success within those organizations. Because technology on its own won't move the needle. For our next section, I would like to introduce Eric Nolan. He's the Director of Sales for Futura Mobility.
Thank you, Bruce. And it's interesting, I have that same scooter, but I got the battery-operated fan on my model. But no, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with everyone today. I'm Eric Nolan, Director of Sales at Futura Mobility. We're a closely aligned partner with Logistar, and as Kyle indicated, the process is going right to the product. I think Bruce actually said that. The process moves to the product, and to do that, you need software, and Logistar is able to help organizations create the screens using SAP Console and ITS Mobile to bring that process to the product. What Futura does as an organization is helps manage that infrastructure and the devices that are used to manage that process. So what I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes is how we offer organizations the ability to simplify that implementation and support of their mobile technology. And this first slide here is called Mobile Force Managed Service Platform, and this is really our approach to all of our projects. We have a process by where we design the solution, we develop required components, we deploy those components, and then finally we support them. And the pictures down below there show the different types of products that we're talking about here. These are the mobile products that are used in the warehouses, out in the field, on the floor. So I'm going to walk through each of those core components and give examples of our services that we provide in this area and how they interact and support the client's use of their SAP systems. On the design side, one of the most important pieces to bring that process to the product is to have a proper wireless infrastructure in your distribution center, in your warehouse, in your manufacturing lines. And what we do there, we have engineers that go on site to do wireless site surveys. They do the heat mapping to get the radio frequency site survey information needed to put cabling and access points in the warehouse to allow that handheld device or that vehicle-mounted computer to communicate with the SAP system. And although Kyle, I thought, had a great illustration there on how SAP Console and ITS Mobile communicate, this is just a little bit of a deeper dive showing a diagram of this wireless infrastructure and how it's built. So you see there on the bottom left of the screen the SAP system running on a server farm with the application servers. Often there's a telnet server in between, and that can host the SAP console as well. If you're using ITS Mobile, you bypass that. But if you go through that data cloud there and you see there's switches and controllers in place to control and to manage the access points that are placed out in the warehouse. And then all those mobile devices and mobile workers are leveraging the wireless network, being able to move around freely and be communicating with the SAP system in real time. And so what our folks are doing is providing the site survey followed by recommendations for procuring the proper components, access points, switches, and controllers typically, managing the whole process, including the cabling, which is also often an important part, and then getting those access points installed and that wireless network up and running so that those devices can communicate. On the development side, it's very important to have the ability as a partner to be able to write those applications that are going to allow you to interact and extend your systems. Kyle mentioned earlier the ability for SAP Console and ITS Mobile to extend the use of the mobile devices for different processes that you'd like to have. The other day we were just talking with someone that wanted to be able to close work orders in the preventive maintenance module using a mobile device. It's a great example outside of a normal inventory or picking process or shipping process for using a mobile device to be able to accomplish that task. And so working closely with the folks at Logistar, Futura programmers will create those programs to allow customers to interact with those devices. And some of those applications include sign and drive applications, inventory management applications, Salesforce automation applications to allow mobile workers to get their jobs done. Moving forward on the wheel of different service components that we offer, the deployment of the technology. So now we've designed and developed the solution. It's time to deploy the solution. And so what we have done is we've created a MobileForce Connect module, which is a suite of components to simplify and improve the deployment of the devices in the environment. And on the left-hand side, you see there devices being configured by a technician so that they can be used seamlessly in the field on the right-hand side there. And that process typically follows the following path and includes the following components. A little delay here. These are the components of the MobileForce Connect. The first step is to develop an image so that that image can be used and reused across multiple iterations of the same device, and even having different images for different devices so that you get a persistent user experience. And so those images are carefully created, and then they're imaged and put on those devices so they can be used. Part of the imaging process also includes creating tool trays that the users can access for commonly used functions. We often lock down the browser so that when they boot up the device, they go right to the applications that we want them to. And a lot of our control and support is done through putting mobile device management agents on the device. And those mobile device management agents have existed for rugged devices for years, but as Bruce mentioned earlier, the convergence of consumer devices has created the need to also have mobile device management software agents available for them. And the tools that we use to accomplish mobile device management extend to the consumer devices as well. Last but not least, the devices are configured to communicate with the wireless infrastructure in place. And then the final touch is to configure the barcode scanners for the barcodes that they will be reading in their day-to-day work. And one of the ways to speed up the scanner speed is to eliminate barcodes that they won't be scanning from the configuration. And one of the nice features that we perform as part of our MobileForce Connect is trying as much as possible to boil down the configuration to a single barcode. And so that makes the support and the resetting of devices very streamlined. One other bonus is we eliminate the non-essential components from the device. We want those workers, those mobile workers, to really be heads down using the device just for what it's intended. So there's elimination of non-essential services. We disable buttons and features on the device and lock down that device to where it only is being used for the purpose for which it was purchased. And then last but not least, if you're using ITS Mobile, we customize a launch page that can be branded with your company logo as well. So that's all part of our MobileForce Connect process and product. Anytime we do a deployment, all deployments follow the following steps that you see on your screen here, and I don't expect you to be able to read all of those boxes, but the major ones are project coordination, and that's working with the client to make sure that deadlines are met and budgets are kept under. Receiving the product, inspecting it, breaking it apart. At our tech center, we actually receive most of the product in on pallets, break it apart, and configure the items, kit it together with all the necessary accessories, which may include batteries, charging cradles, cables, and so forth, by location, so that when that location gets their shipment and opens it up, it has all the components necessary for them to open those boxes and get to work. After imaging and configuration, we have a QA process, and then thereafter, staging and shipment of the equipment, all being project managed and coordinated with our project manager. So the deployment of the technology goes smoothly and coincides and precedes the training of the SAP software by Logistar folks. Now, once that hardware is in the field, who's going to support it? And I think, as Bruce mentioned, as people take on more and more activities with mobile devices, it's a specialty product that doesn't always fall inside organizations' level 1 help desk for PCs and laptops. So what Futura provides as an outsource is the ability to support these specialized mobile devices and infrastructures as an outsource to save the customer money, but also to keep that business running. And one of the most important things to keep those hardware devices running is to have them properly covered with a maintenance program. Futura offers 3 different maintenance programs, each with a different varying business return days, and also all of these coverages cover accidental damage. And why would it be important to have accidental damage covered? Well, if you see some of the devices that come into the warehouse after they've been run over by a forklift or dropped from a 20 feet high rack space, you'll see why. But basically, the coverage is important because that allows us to send out a replacement unit. In some cases, we have spare pool agreements set up with the customer to be able to send an advanced spare out with a prepaid label to send the defective unit back to us. We receive that defective unit, test it, get it fixed under the warranty that's with the manufacturer, and put it back in the spare pool. But the site itself is back up and running same day or next day, depending on the service level and the program that is put into place. So the concept here is, on Mobile Force Complete, is to have business continuity and to keep those mobile workers working. And here is just a description of, or a flow diagram showing that level 1, a customer's level 1 site experiences a problem, calls the help desk, and then that help desk typically would interact with our level 2 hardware help desk, handle the receipt of the call, sending out the new unit, getting the old unit fixed under RMA from the manufacturer, and then returning the unit either to the spare pool or to the customer, depending on the service arrangement. And typically, with most of our clients, we set up service level agreements that we report on weekly or monthly to make sure that our clients are getting the service that they're paying for. I have a little delay. One more slide here. Here it comes. Okay, just to wrap it up, there's some other value-added solutions that are used to complete the picture of support, one of which is an online purchasing portal. So once a catalog of commonly used items are determined, if an end-user site needs to order accessories or additional units or additional services, there's a streamlined way with a customized catalog per customer to allow that purchasing to be very streamlined. The other important tool that we have is a customer care portal, and that's where we actually, for each customer, have all their locations loaded in and all the assets by serial number loaded into the portal, so that when a call comes in related to one of their assets, one of their devices, we can quickly determine the warranty status, the maintenance program that it's on. We know the service level, we know the workflow required to get that device repaired and back into service. We also have the ability to report and allow end users to go on this portal as well and see the status of their assets. And then one other value-added feature, in addition to doing mobile device management for the handhelds and vehicle-mounted computers and barcode scanners, the ability to offer print management services for consumables and label media to allow you to have a low cost per label and yet have a high coverage program on those devices, so that you don't have to worry about running out of media or worrying about those devices being out of play. So I appreciate the time today and being able to describe our services and how we work closely with Logistar on delivering those services and processes on behalf of their customers.
All right, thank you, Eric, and also thank you, Kyle and Bruce. That's it for the main presentation. We did get some really good questions in, so obviously keeping time sensitive, probably keep it to about 5 or 6 questions. But just going in the order they came in, I have a couple for Kyle regarding like SAP Console. Kyle, is the SAP Console still supported?
Yeah, that's a good question. Because as I pointed out before, it is a mature product. Thousands of customers are essentially running SAP Console. SAP is not going to invest anymore, like R&D, into developing or enhancing SAP Console. I have seen it referenced a few places that it may be nearing end of life, but I haven't seen an official announcement from SAP on it. But what I can say is that, installs that we're doing, like new installs, net new installs, and upgrades, have really been pushing more towards ITS Mobile.
Okay, great. And right in the same line, is performance better in SAP Console or ITS Mobile?
That's another common good question. Both are ultimately sub-second response solutions, real-time, again, back to the ERP system. But I think if you're to measure with the micrometer, essentially you take SAP Console, it's going to tend to be a little bit faster just due to the smaller data packet size, whereas ITS Mobile, you're rendering HTML. So, but to your normal end user, I don't think they're going to notice a difference between performance of SAP Console or ITS Mobile.
Okay, great. And can you run both in the same environment?
In fact, you can. We have clients that are running maybe the warehouse operations were running in SAP Console, and they did a phase 2, or they did a a new warehouse or an add-on. Maybe they brought up production and wanted to RF-enable production, and then they went with ITS Mobile. So as long as your infrastructure can support, meaning you have the SAP Console server and the Telnet software, and then your ITS running with NetWeaver, you can absolutely run both within your environment.
Great. Okay, Bruce, a couple for you. What are the typical benefits of implementing the rugged type of solutions versus, say, like the iOS consumer type devices in the distribution centers?
Well, certainly, as was mentioned during the webinar, the consumer-grade devices just are not rugged enough for the distribution environment. They may be applicable sometimes in a field service type of environment, but in a DC, they're not rugged enough. These devices a lot of times are in harsh environments where there's moisture, where there's a lot of dust and dirt, typically concrete floors. So the total cost of ownership really rises when you move to commercial-grade devices.
Okay, makes sense. There's an attendee out there. They said they currently use Motorola. How is Intermec different? And I guess in that same line of questioning, how would Intermec really differentiate from all the other ruggedized devices out there?
Well, one of the things I think that differentiates us is certainly we use imaging technology to capture, so we have the fastest imaging and scanning engine in the market. So, if somebody's doing a high volume of scans per day, we're going to capture those faster. We can also, with our imager, capture 2D barcodes, and we can do within the same engine near-far scanning. So if I have to capture information close to me as well as maybe higher in a rack, I don't have to carry 2 devices. But I think from a higher level, what makes Intermec different is that Intermec is not just a rugged mobile device provider. As mentioned during the webinar, Intermec is a total provider across all processes within the DC and really across the supply chain from supplier through consumer. And we have a full line of solutions, including not just mobile computers like some of our competitors, but also printers and RFID, voice technology, as well as software components that complement those. And we're the only provider in the industry that can provide that full suite of solutions.
Great. Thank you. Eric, just 2 last questions for you. Even though one was submitted by Darcy, even though she's no longer here, I think it's a great question. What solutions have we seen or used to successfully deal with intermittent Wi-Fi issues when it comes to SAP inventory management or warehouse management solutions?
Sure. Well, a lot of customers choose to use a connection server like a GeorgiaSoft Toolworks, but one of the things that we offer as a service is wireless remediation. And what we do there, it often doesn't require any type of site survey. It's usually an on-site visit. We take advantage of an existing site survey if there is one, but we can actually go out with our equipment and find those trouble spots and then recommend remediation, and it's typically a lot less expensive than doing a full-fledged site survey.
Okay. And I know yourself and Bruce also mentioned BYOD during the presentation. Is it possible to manage both smartphones and rugged devices under one mobile device management platform?
Absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, mobile device management for rugged devices has been going on for a lot longer than, say, the consumer mobile device management products that you see out in the field today. And so I have a little bit more of a lean toward some of the traditional products that have added consumer support versus the consumer products that have added rugged support. But the important thing when you're choosing that mobile device management tool is to make sure it does handle all of the operating systems, including WinMobile, which some of the newer consumer devices are kind of forgetting about. So if you have a mix in your fleet, it's important to make sure the mobile device management tool supports, goes back and supports WinMobile and continues to do so at least for the next several years.
Okay, well, thank you. Everyone, that concludes our webinar for today. It's just about 5 minutes to 3 o'clock Eastern time here. So I wanted to thank you again for attending. Any questions that have not been answered today, we'll make sure to follow up with everybody individually. We're also going to be sending a copy of the presentation as a PDF as well as a link to the recording. And finally, I know as we mentioned earlier, please take a minute just to complete the short survey at the end of the webinar. Your feedback is very valuable to us and much appreciated. So once again, thank you all very much for your time and have a good day.